Welcome to the Education Next Generation Conference. We are your hosts. I'm Cecilia Hilke.
And I'm Jason Hilke.
And we are delighted today to have Dr. Ross Greene with us. He is the originator of the innovative, empirically supported approach, now known as collaborative and proactive solutions, as described in his influential books, The Explosive Child and Lost at School. Dr. Greene served on the teaching faculty at Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and is currently adjunct associate professor in the Department of Psychology at Virginia Tech. He's also the founding director of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance, which provides free web-based resources on the CPS model, support and advocacy for behaviorally challenging kids and their caregivers, takes a strong stand against the use of corporal punishment at home and in the school, the use of detention, suspension, and expulsion in schools, preschools, and daycare settings, and advocates for interventions that are non-punitive and non-adversarial. Dr. Greene lectures and provides consultation to families, schools, and restrictive therapeutic facilities throughout the world, and lives in Portland, Maine with his wife and 2 kids. Welcome, Dr. Greene. It's great to have you.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
So first I wanted to ask about the term, the explosive child. When you refer to a child who's explosive, who exactly are you talking about?
I'm not too picky about the term. Quite frankly, I think we all have our bad moments. And so I'm probably referring to every kid and every adult sometimes. But the kids who I tend to work with tend to be more easily frustrated than others and more often, and show that they are frustrated in ways that are more extreme. All of that is captured by the word explosive, which I quite frankly have never loved. When you're just running with explosive, you're also leaving out imploders, whiners, pouters, sulkers, withdrawers, criers. And those kids are imploding for exactly the same reasons that kids who are screaming and swearing and scratching and biting are exploding. So I can't say that I'm especially picky about the descriptive term, and by the way, not even that picky about what behavior the kid is exhibiting to express the fact that he or she is having difficulty meeting an expectation. The expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting is a whole lot more important than the behavior the kid is exhibiting to let us know he or she is having difficulty meeting it.
Why do you say that expectation is more important? Because that's something that we need to tune into as parents and teachers. We need to reconsider our expectations sometimes.
Well, not only that, but mostly because I find that we adults tend to be absolutely obsessed with behavior. But I think of behavior as the byproduct. It's just the signal. It's just the fever. It's just the way that the kid is communicating that he or she is having difficulty meeting a particular expectation. And if all we're focused on is the behavior, then we're going to end up modifying the behavior. And if we're only modifying the kid's behavior, then the behavior may improve, but the problems that are causing the kid's behavior don't get solved at all. What I find is that when we're solving problems collaboratively and proactively with kids, we are killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We are not only solving the problem, we are also taking care of the behavior that was the byproduct of that problem. So a great deal of my work is focused on helping adults focus way less on behavior and modifying it, and way more on the problems that are causing those behaviors and solving them.
And when we want to shift from focusing on behaviors to really the problems that are causing them, how do you actually get that perspective? What do you have, like steps that someone can go through? Do you have what do you suggest as a teacher or as a parent when they're struggling with, okay, I don't want to look at this behavior, I really want to figure out what's going on underneath it? How do I figure out what is underneath it?
Well, we've developed an instrument called the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems. People can find it on the Lives in the Balance website. It's in the resources section, along with all the other paperwork that's associated with this model. It's all free, so we're not selling anything here. What we are selling is understanding and helping behaviorally challenging kids better than we do now. But we don't have a tremendous profit motive in doing that. But the Assessment of Lagging Skills and Unsolved Problems is a way to figure out the 2 most important things we need to figure out about behaviorally challenging kids. What I tell people is there's basically 2 questions we need to answer to really help this kid and to help make his challenging episodes more predictable. Why? When? Why are challenging kids challenging? because they're lacking the skills to not be challenging. That's what the research of the last 40 to 50 years tells us. Believe it or not, it's that simple. Challenging kids are challenging because they're lacking the skills to not be challenging, which means we got to figure out what their lagging skills are. And that's the lagging skills part of the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. When are challenging kids challenging? When the expectations being placed upon them outstrip their skills. So we also have to figure out when they're challenging, what those expectations are. We call them unmet expectations, but mostly we call them unsolved problems. That's the unsolved problems part of the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. There's all kinds of video on the Lives in a Balance website to help people know how to use the LSIP. And there's also the LSIP guide that walks them through it as well. There's also video on the Lives in a Balance website actually showing me using the LSIP with two parents to help identify the lagging skills and unsolved problems of their son. Once we figure out why, lagging skills. Once we figure out when, unsolved problems. Now we know this kid way better than we'd know him if all we knew about him was the behaviors he exhibits when he's looking bad, and if all we knew about him was the psychiatric disorders that summarize the behaviors that he's exhibiting when he's looking bad. So what I often tell people is I don't really know much about a kid if all I know about is his behavior and his diagnosis. I know just about everything I need to know if I know why and when he's looking bad, why and when he gets stuck. But to my other point, that also makes his challenging episodes predictable, which means we can be solving the problems that are causing them proactively. So another huge part of this model is to try to get people out of the heat of the moment and help them start solving problems collaboratively and proactively.
Makes a lot of sense. I think that's really where we want to be when we're working with kids, especially the challenging kids, is trying to collaboratively. I mean, that's what we're talking about so much in the conference.
And out of the heat of the moment.
And out, like the proactive kind of conversations that we're having. Are there certain triggers that as a parent or as a teacher would indicate to me I should be using the LSIP? This is a time when I should go and I should look at this for a child versus, and what I mean by that is it just like every child? Because it seems like almost many kids could probably benefit from it, but I wonder if there's certain like indicators or triggers for me maybe triggers is the wrong term because that could insinuate signs, that are flags to me of like, oh, now's the time when this is a child where we can go through and look at the LSIP for him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we find the LSIP to be especially useful for kids who are getting stuck a lot because usually they have a lot of lagging skills and a lot of unsolved problems. And it's good to identify what they are. I always tell people you're doing a kid a huge favor by finally identifying the skills he's lacking. Probably nobody's done that before. And all the expectations he's having difficulty meeting. Probably nobody's ever done that before either because everybody's been so focused on the kid's behavior. We're not focused on the most important parts. But to your point, what I solve problems collaboratively and proactively with any kid and any human being in a heartbeat. And here's the reason. You can get away with being punitive and being obsessed with adult-imposed consequences with regular old kids because they can kind of take it. But that doesn't mean it's good practice. It just means they can take it. What I find is that when we're solving problems collaboratively and proactively with any old kid, we are also teaching them a lot of very important skills like empathy and appreciating how one's behavior is affecting other people and resolving disagreements in ways that do not involve conflict and taking another person's perspective and honesty. All of these really crucial skills that are really what help humans display the better side of human nature. Because what we find is that when those skills are not there, humans display the nasty side of human nature. But when those skills are there, we see the more positive side of human nature. So my attitude is just because you can get away with unilateral problem solving with a regular old kid doesn't mean you want to. Those kids need us to be teaching them skills too.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Can you describe what it means to collaboratively and proactively solve a problem. You describe that as being like plan B in your book.
Well, we described 3 plans in the CPS model. Plan A is when you're solving a problem unilaterally through the imposition of adult will. Plan B is when you're solving a problem collaboratively. That's when you and the kid are partnering on getting problems solved. Rather than doing something to the kid, you're doing something with him. And Plan C is where you are setting aside a given unsolved problem, at least for now, not because you're giving in, but because, especially in the case of kids who have a lot of unsolved problems, you can't solve them all at once. There's just too many of them, so you're going to have to prioritize. So Plan C is where you're prioritizing. But solving a problem collaboratively basically involves 3 steps. They are called, the names don't matter that much, but they are called the empathy step, the define adult concerns step, and the invitation step. But the ingredients of each step matter much more. The main ingredient of the empathy step is information gathering and understanding. This is where caregivers, whether this is a parent or a teacher or a staff member in a restrictive therapeutic facility. Before we were doing this, I was in a juvenile detention center, and what were we teaching them how to do? Solve problems collaboratively and proactively with the residents who are in their care. And most of these residents are walking into the facility, of course, with massive piles of unsolved problems. How did the piles get so big? People, before they got to this facility, weren't focused on their unsolved problems. They were focused on the behaviors the kids were exhibiting in response to those unsolved problems. That's what's walking into prison. But anyways, it's 3 steps no matter where you are, no matter who you are. The empathy step is where you're gathering information from the kid. We want to achieve the clearest possible understanding of the kid's concern, perspective, point of view on the unsolved problem we're talking with him about, preferably proactively. Kids have information we very badly need. We get a lot of jaw-dropping moments in the empathy step when adults are hearing what's really getting in the kid's way of the kid meeting the expectation, and it is completely different from what the adults were thinking and completely different what the adults thought they were going to hear. Jaw-dropping moments. And by the way, kids are delighted to participate because when you're using Plan A, you're taking their voice away, and now you're giving them their voice back. And we are living in a time in human evolution where we are seeing that human beings who do not feel that their voices are being heard get very angry about it and insist that their voices be heard. Good for them. The define adult concerns step is where the adult is entering his or her concern into perspective on the same unsolved problem. Adults have very important concerns too. Unfortunately, adults usually try to get those concerns addressed through use of Plan A. Now you're trying to get those exact same concerns addressed through use of Plan B. Same exact concern, completely different approach to getting it addressed. This makes a lot of adults feel better because they thought that they'd be selling themselves down the river by doing Plan B. Nothing could be further from the truth. They feel they're not holding the kid accountable by doing Plan B. Nothing could be further from the truth. All the things people assume about Plan B that they think Plan A is buying them, Plan B is buying them a lot better. Finally, the invitation. This is where kid and adult are collaborating on a solution. But a very special type of solution, a solution that's going to address the concerns of both parties. And those are sometimes hard to come by, but you get more jaw-dropping moments in the invitation as we discover that there's a lot of kids out there who are a whole lot more capable of coming up with solutions that not only address their concerns, but also ours than we thought. So the whole experience is kind of jaw-dropping, but the whole thing is non-punitive, non-adversarial, no reason for the kid to be your enemy when he could be your partner. That's how you solve a problem collaboratively and proactively.
And how do you approach a child to enter into this Plan B conversation when they're so used to being hit with Plan A, and they're like, this is just gonna be another one of the Plan A's? I mean, obviously those aren't their words, but how do you build that? Is it a foundation? Yeah. Is there something that can be said? How do we go about entering that into this?
That is one of the things that we sometimes hear from parents is, my child doesn't want to have this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And I usually think, well, It's probably because you're not truly collaborative. You're not. What's your take?
Well, that's my take, is that the vast majority of kids are accustomed to plan A. They're accustomed, there's not a conversation. It's it's adults telling them what's going to be coming their way if they don't meet the expectation. Just as an example, and then I'll speak further to it. I was doing a telephone interview this morning with a reporter in Toronto, and he was asking me about this astoundingly new intervention that parents had been telling him about, of taking the door off the kid's room. And it was really improving the kid's behavior. And he asked me what I thought of it. And my response was, I can promise you this. He said, the kids were slamming their doors less often because the door had been taken off the room. And I said, well, now that makes perfect sense to me, that you wouldn't be able to slam the door as often if there is no door. But here's the important point. Taking the door off the kid's room, timeouts, stickers do not solve the problems that cause the behaviors that we are administering all those consequences about in the first place. That's the whole point. We're focused on the wrong part. What I'm hearing about is the aftermath. Door slamming. He did this. That's not the point. The point is, what problem caused it, and how are we going to get together with the kid on solving it? That's the point. Now, how do you get the kid engaged in the conversation? First of all, if the kid knows that you're not doing plan A, if he knows you're not going to be talking with him about his behavior, if he doesn't think he's in trouble, if he doesn't think the boom is about to be lowered, the vast majority of kids are absolutely delighted to tell you what their concerns are. Okay, they've been chomping at the bit for the opportunity to tell you. We just haven't been giving them the chance because we've been so busy talking about their behavior and what we're going to do to them if they keep doing it. So here's what's amazing. I don't have trouble getting kids to participate. All I have to do is reassure them. And the key word here in reassuring them, besides you're not in trouble, I'm not mad, I'm not going to tell you what to do, the key here is curiosity. And the key word is understanding. I've done Plan B in many different parts of the world with many different kids in many different cultures, and many adults too. I have yet to find a human being who wasn't pretty invested in making sure that their story got heard and pretty invested in hearing that their concerns were heard and addressed. I just haven't come across it yet. We have to set the stage for it. 70 to 80% of the time that the kids don't talk to us, it has more to do with us than it does with the kid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's something that we try to talk to families about, is recognizing that they're a big part of this. It's not just the child. And what I was wondering is, what do you say? This is another thing that we are often told by parents. Parents ask us is, that's all fine, that's good, I want to work with them, but it just takes so much longer. Like I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
What do you say to a parent that says, or a teacher that says, I've got a room full of kids and I'm just trying to survive. I've got 5 kids at home, I'm trying to survive. What do you say?
I say, you sure do look exhausted, and whatever you're doing now must be taking up an enormous amount of time and an enormous amount of energy, because you look very tired. And what I say to parents who end up in my office is, wait a minute, you didn't wait all this time to get into an appointment, because what you're doing now is working really well, right? So you didn't come to me just to tell you that what you're doing now is just fine, because what you're doing now is why you sought me out in the first place. You need something different. But everybody's always worried about time. I work with a lot of parents whose kids are way overscheduled and parents who are ridiculously busy themselves. There is no profession in the world that has more initiatives thrown at it than educators. For many people, CPS feels like the flavor of the month. This too shall pass. And everybody's worried about time in the beginning. But what we find is that nobody's complaining about time 3 or 4 months in to actually trying to get good at this. In fact, what they're saying 3 or 4 months in is that Plan B saves time. So I get it that people are worried about time, but sometimes I have to point out to them in very explicit terms, just how much time they're taking using plan A and having nothing to show for it except a lot of meltdowns, which take an enormous amount of time. Yeah. There's the answer.
Yeah, and plan A takes a whole lot more energy, I think, as a teacher and as a parent than plan B does in the long run.
Well, nothing's more de-energizing than doing something that's not working.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that was a light bulb moment for me in reading your book, because we were already on the collaborative, like, let's work things out kind of bandwagon. I thought I was a really big hot sheet teacher, that I was doing really good. And then I got this one kid, I was like, whoa, okay, my stuff isn't working. And the light bulb moment for me was understanding that what was happening was a predictable response, that I actually had to take a step back from teaching in the classroom to observe what was happening, because otherwise it caught me off guard every single time. It was unpredictable. So I wonder if you could speak to that, how predictable these things are.
Remarkably, if we put the hard work into figuring it out. What makes these kids predictable is knowing what their lagging skills are, knowing what their unsolved problems are, knowing what expectations they're having difficulty meeting. And then I like to refer to these kids as 99% predictable. There is the occasional surprise. But what I usually say about these kids is once you figure out lagging skills and unsolved problems, there are very, very few surprises left. And what people come to discover is that they have been getting into conflict over the same stuff every day, every hour. One of the things I'll say about the kids who are exploders is that they're not keeping any secrets. You know exactly when things are going haywire for them, but then you just got to rewind the tape a little bit and take a look at what expectation preceded the behavior. But that requires not being obsessed with the behavior and being totally obsessed with the expectations that are causing those behaviors. Now you're in a position to work with the kid and solve problems proactively. You don't figure that stuff out, still in the heat of the moment, still what I call running around like a chicken with its head cut off, bouncing from one crisis to another. We do not need to be in crisis management mode with this population of kids. We can be in crisis prevention mode 99% of the time.
I know it was a big relief for us, when, especially with that child, but with others too, when we were able to identify those triggers. It was just a big relief for us because then we knew what we were dealing with. So I know that your time is precious, and we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Your book has made a significant difference in our lives as parents and as teachers. And
thank you.
We really appreciate the work that you're doing. I know many other people at the conference also appreciate it. They're very excited to hear from you, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, given everything that had happened. And it's been a great time just chatting with you about all this. Anything else?
Oh,
yes.
If there are places for other people to get more resources, where would you direct them to?
2 websites. The website where everything's free is the website of the nonprofit, Lives in the Balance, LIVES in the balance.org. It is an absolute treasure trove of free resources on the CPS model. The place people want to go first is the walking tours, either for educators or for parents. That's got all kinds of streaming video and audio programming in it to walk people right through this model, all free. The other website is the cpsconnection.com website, which is where there's all kinds of trainings listed if people want more than what they got from us today. All
right. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing what other work you have coming out. And Lives in the Balance is such a bounty of resources. We appreciate offering that for us.
That was the goal. And thank you for your persistence in making this happen. It wasn't easy.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.